Hello, I'm Snorky McBoulderbust, and you have now reached the fourth and final part of this review series. If you haven't watched the other three parts first, please do so. Don't start at the end. And now, the conclusion. Number 30. Finally, the third arc. The third and final arc. Christmas is upon us, and we learn that Cody has only now decided to let bygones be bygones with Ken. Really? Ken gave up being the Kaiser in August. That's almost half a year ago. Come on, Cody. He's clearly a different person now. And it's not like he's proud of his past actions. He feels bad about it every waking moment. The best thing to do in this situation would be to move on. Create a relationship with this new Ken rather than the old Kaiser. Which, admittedly, you're doing now. I guess it's better late than never. At this point, Genai from Season 1 enters the narrative. Where has he been all this season? Why didn't he show up to mentor the new chosen children and help them fight against the Digimon Kaiser and Black War Greymon? And what's with this redesign? In Season 1, we saw a holographic flashback with this younger version. That made sense, as the flashback would have taken place several years back, especially with the previously mentioned time dilation and everything. So, why did Genai age from a young man in the flashback to an ancient fossil in Season 1, to once again being a young man in Season 2? We're never told why, but this choice must have been made for some reason. I just don't understand why. Nor do I understand why he went back to wearing Jedi robes. Was his fashion sense de-aged too? Then there's the fact that Genai has a bunch of duplicates. At first, they introduce themselves as his friends, but later they start saying that they're copies of him. What's up with that? They promise to explain later, but of course, that never happens. Genai shows up and he gives some extra power to all of the partner Digimon, which causes Yoli and Cody's partner Digimons to evolve from their baby stage into their child stage. That's fine. However, once the evolution commences, they start spinning, just like in the evolution sequences. Now, while I appreciate the diegetic spinning animation, this is not how that's supposed to work. In Season 1, we saw that no actual spinning takes place when a monster evolves. The spinning sequence is just a visual for the audience. In reality, it looks pretty much the same as how Pokemon evolves in the Pokemon anime. The monster simply starts glowing and growing. Also, how come Poromon changes direction when it evolves? Both Upamon and Armadillomon spin counterclockwise, as does Poromon. However, once Hawkmon appears, it suddenly changes direction to clockwise. So that's odd. Number 31. Around the world in 80 minutes. Digimon start showing up all over the world, and our heroes have to go clean them all up. At this point, we learn that there have been at least 200 other chosen children just hanging around in the real world all of this time. Why didn't they come along and help out before? Why only give 5 kids access to the digital world? Look at all these people who could have helped defeat the Kaiser before. Sure, they would have to use their Digimon at child level, but that's better than nothing. Once again, child monsters aren't useless. Who do you think would win in a fight between 1 Vegemon and 200 child Digimon? And as I've said before, at least some of them would have to be able to armor evolve. During these trips, the chosen children pair up in groups of 2. 1 Season 1 character and 1 from Season 2. This could actually be interesting. Part of what made Season 1 great was that the group split up in different combinations so often. Because of this, we got to see how each of the characters bounced off of each other. But what's the deal with these pairings? The pairs are Kari and Dizzy, Cody and Joe, TK and Ty, Ken and Matt, Jolie and Sora, and finally Davis, who pairs up with both Mimi and Michael. Okay, what were the writers thinking here? We've never seen basically any of these couples alone together, only as part of a larger group. They barely know each other. At first, I was hopeful that this was the point. They don't know each other, but now we will learn what their dynamic is like. However, if you thought that these Season 2 episodes were interested in exploring character dynamics, you haven't been paying attention to this review, have you? The only pairs out of these that are understandable are Joe and Cody and Yoli and Sora. Joe and Cody already spent some time alone before, once when they were freezing to death in a cave, and another when the others were drowning. Yoli and Sora have the crest of love in common, so I guess they are best friends or whatever. Also, they were kidnapped and held hostage together. Out of the couples that are left, Ty and TK is the only one that makes some teeny tiny wee bit of sense. They spent a whole episode together in Season 1, but still, wouldn't it make more sense if Ty went with Cory and TK with Matt? These are siblings, remember? Then you would have Ken and Izzy left, and they have already spent time alone together back in the exposition episode where Jolie went to Kyoto. Davis goes to the USA and has to partner up with Michael. We learn that Michael is the son of a Hollywood movie star. You see, Michael's only character trait is that he's cool, or rather, that he's perceived as being cool. It seems that the only purpose for his dad being a big star is to reinforce Michael's coolness. But if that wasn't enough, they also felt the need to make him a pilot. Isn't movie star cool enough? I mean, there's nothing saying he can't be both an actor and a pilot, but why is he both? Davis is apparently a huge fan of this actor and his films, but this comes out of nowhere. Wouldn't it have been better if we were shown this before introducing us to this meeting? Like, in a few episodes earlier, there was a news segment about Digimon and Dark Towers popping up all over the world. How about that scene would have started with Davis watching one of Michael's dad's movies, but then maybe his sister comes in and tells him to turn on the news instead. Davis wouldn't want that, because he loves the movie, so he fights with his sister for the remote. In the end, she manages to flip the channel, but then their fight is interrupted by the terrible news about the Digimon invasion. And look at that, now there's even some of Davis' relationship with his sister thrown in. I think that would be better. At least Michael's dad speaks English rather than Japanese. However, his vocabulary seems to be limited to simple phrases like
"Hey guys, let's go! Yeah! Fantastic!"
and
"Wow! Delicious!"
I appreciate that he speaks his own language, but it just makes me question why Michael can speak Japanese even more. The language barrier is a very inconsistent element in this arc. Cory and Jolie's groups encounter foreigners who only speak their own language and can't understand Japanese, which would be the most realistic outcome in this scenario. On the other hand, Cody and TK's groups, as well as Davis, bump into kids that magically speak fluent Japanese without any explanation. If they really wanted this mini-arc to have an international feeling, then why not have the foreign chosen children speak their native languages? It's so weird that most of the other foreign characters speak Japanese. I mean, it can't be too hard to translate a few sentences into other languages. Just buy a dictionary, write some subtitles, or maybe write it so that at least the Digimon can still understand each other. Work around the language barrier somehow. Okay, Cory and Izzy arrive in Hong Kong and meet the Poi brothers. Because Cory and Izzy only speak Japanese, there are some communication problems. However, Jackie, one of Jenai's duplicates, sweeps in and manages to communicate by speaking Japanese. And then it's like the language barrier simply doesn't exist anymore. How is Jackie able to make the Poi brothers understand Japanese all of a sudden? I don't get it. The worst part is when the writers try to pretend that the language issue doesn't exist. Like when this Australian chosen child introduces himself in English but speaks in Japanese for the rest of their interactions. He says,
"This is the Digi-Destiny Dingo of Australia."
I mean, wow. First of all, his name is Dingo. Second of all, that might have been the worst fake Australian accent I've ever heard. And it's not even properly translated. Anyways, Dingo teams up with Cody and Joe. They are soon attacked by these aquatic Digimon, but the kids threaten to make seafood out of them. These seafood mix jokes aren't funny. But the Digimon are scared by the threats, and Dingo says, so that's their weakness. What does that even mean? You're threatening to eat them, and that scared them. I don't know if I would call that a weakness. But then an Anomalikarimon shows up. In contrast to most other Digimon, all he says is just his own name, like a Pokemon. Why? Is he not sentient? The seafood trio could speak normally. Why can't this stronger seafood monster do that? Then Dingo's Crabmon evolves. Hey, no, there's a Dark Tower back there. Crabmon shouldn't be able to evolve. How are you evolving? No, don't put the laptop down in the sand. You'll get sand into it. Stop doing everything wrong. Enough of that. Meanwhile in France, Tai and TK visit TK's grandfather Michel. I find it odd that Grandpa Michel doesn't react to the Digimon. He just treats them as human friends of TK. Then he notes that the gates of the Palace of Versailles are open and decides they must investigate. This whole palace thing is so bizarre. Inside, we meet the Vamdemon brothers, who sing to no one in particular that they are in fact the Vamdemon brothers. Is this a common thing among brothers? And also, let me get this straight. Vamdemon, Metal Vamdemon, Big Vamdemon, and Giromon went past here, and then they decided to party in the palace. So then, rather than flying above or destroying the gates, they simply opened them somehow. You'd think the gates would be locked, especially on Christmas Eve. Just stopping for a moment and questioning things is like kryptonite to this show. Nothing makes sense. Also, little nitpick here. Vamdemon's name literally means bean monster, because he's supposed to be small as a little bean. And Big Vamdemon is supposed to subvert that and be super huge. Dozens or hundreds of times larger. I think it would have been more fun if the animators had made the size differences more extreme, since, well, size is these monsters' gimmick. If you're not going to play with their size, why choose these monsters for this scene? Inside, we meet the French chosen child, Catherine. Tai tells Greymon to evolve into the perfect level to match the Vamdemon trio. Catherine tells her partner, Floramon, you too, which would mean that Floramon is supposed to evolve into perfect level as well. However, she only reaches the adult form Kiwimon. Whoops. How did Metal Greymon's Giga Destroyer not kill them? We've seen what that attack can do to perfect monsters before. And how come Joe and Cody had to pull their Dark Tower down with a rope when Holy Angemon can make this entire tower disintegrate just by slashing it? Let's check in on Ken and Matt, who have traveled to Mexico. This is the first time we see Matt interact with Ken after he gave up on being the Digimon Kaiser. How is Matt adjusting to Ken's new identity? Oh right, sorry, we're not doing that. While the two are trying to infiltrate these Mayan ruins, this here guard pulls a gun on the boys. You'd think that looking down the barrel of a gun would traumatize the boys for the rest of their days, yet a few seconds later, it's like it never happened. Hey, look at that! Gotsumon gets his own evolution sequence. But what about the other foreign partner monsters? Why didn't Betamon, Floramon, Shakomon, or Crabmon get their own evolution sequence? In relation to the others, this Gotsumon sequence just stands out as weird, which isn't a good thing. Yoli and Sora try to communicate with these Russian chosen children. What the fuck is with this Russian greeting scene? It just goes on and on and on, and I assume it's supposed to be funny, but I just don't get it. Well, at least the language barrier is being addressed as a problem in this scene, which should be how pretty much all of these episodes turned out. Anyways, Yoli tries to come up with a plan to fight a group of Flymon. The only Russian words she knows are piroshki, borscht, and caviar. Yoli tries to use body language to tell the Russians that borscht will mean go left and piroshki means go right. The Russians seem to understand the plan simply by Yoli's body language. But if the meaning of the words is stripped from them, then she could have used any words. Yoli could have said left and right in Japanese while doing the body language, and the Russians would have understood just as well. Using these Russian words they already associate with something else will only confuse the situation even more. If Yoli is the leader here, then how about she simply teach the Russians how to say left and right in Japanese? Or actually learn the Russian words for left and right? Using piroshki and borscht like this is just... Listen, I'm Swedish. If someone told me, hey, when I say Swedish meatball, you go left, and when I say Swedish fish, you go right, I would think they were insulting my intelligence. How come these Russian characters don't think that any of this is weird? And why don't they speak any Russian with each other? Why don't they discuss this situation? They come across as mute idiots. This scene is stupid, and I don't think anyone behind the scenes thought it through at all. At least I enjoyed a soundbite of Kuwagamon saying, in a matter of seconds, the Flymons are defeated. Afterwards, we get this scene where a group of Mammothmon attacks. Why is this sequence here? It's called The Bird Monsters Fail, and then Imperial Ramon, the Pile Ramon's evolution, whatever. He swoops in and saves the day. This scene adds nothing. It's just pointless filler to an already pointless episode. Luckily, this is the last episode of this World Tour mini-arc. Since all of it took place on Christmas Eve, we're treated to a montage of characters celebrating. Oh joy! I'm not comfortable with TK's grandfather Michel spending the holidays with Catherine. This seems eerily romantic, which makes me... He's an older gentleman and she's like, what, 10? Why are those two having Christmas dinner together? He mentioned that his wife is still alive before. Shouldn't he spend Christmas with her instead? And where are Catherine's parents? Wait, is that champagne? No, little girl, don't drink the alcohol with the man. Number 32. Kidnapped Children and Demons from Hell. A few episodes back, we were introduced to Oikawa. This guy is the big bad of the season. He's the creator of Arachnomon and Mamimon. All Oikawa wants is to go to the digital world, but for some reason only children can enter. He tries to circumvent this by planting dark towers all over, I guess. So, if Oikawa's goal was to enter the digital world, why did his minions actively seek out the Holy Stones and destroy them a few episodes ago? Destroying the Holy Stones will pretty much destroy the digital world. Is this another instance of the writers making it up as they were going along? I think so. While the kids were flying all around the world, Mamimon and Arachnomon have been kidnapping little children. This scene with Mamimon is so freaking creepy. It's pretty great. But then there's this scene where Arachnomon is just standing in a dank alley with the spinny star, and this little girl says she's scary but she might understand me. What line of thinking is that? Why would you talk to a scary stranger who looks like this and who is obviously shady? What about her makes you think that she, out of all the people in your life, can understand you? At this point in the story, we're introduced to another set of villains, Demon and his gang of devils. These guys are just filler, just a distraction from Oikawa and his goons. It's like the writers realized that, shit, we have 8 episodes left but not enough story. Quick, we better shove in some other bad guys. All that happens is that the 3 fusion monsters kill 1 bad guy each, just to let their human partners feel what it's like. I guess we should talk about that. In Season 2, a big deal is made about the good guys killing monsters, rather than simply destroying their evil rings. Why is this such a problem now all of a sudden? The bad guys were killed all the time in Season 1. These are evil monsters, programmed to lack remorse or any redemptive capabilities. Even though Lady Devimon and Marine Angemon are literal demons, Having to kill them is a big deal to both Cody and Jolie for some reason. A few episodes back, Jolie and Cody refused to go all in against Golemon, even when it was clear that he was about to destroy a dam, which would lead to the destruction of a whole village, and thereby the deaths of hundreds of Digimon. Yet for some reason, both of them celebrated when Chimeramon was destroyed. Jolie manages to save this guy from Lady Devimon. Before Lady Devimon can attack them, she is killed by Sylphimon. Jolie seemingly understands that killing your enemy is needed sometimes, and Cody is forced to come to the same conclusion. The problem is that these events come across as a bit rushed. There's not much build-up, and it's forgotten as soon as it's over. This hospital scene is over in less than a minute. Marine Devimon is just suddenly killed from a single attack. You know what I would have liked? A scene where Kari has a talk with Jolie about killing bad guys. One of Kari's big hero moments in Season 1 was when she managed to evolve Gatomon into Angelwomon for the first time. This was a big deal since it allowed her to defeat Vamdemon by killing him. You can have a similar scene between Cody and TK. The first time Patamon evolved into Angelmon, his holy attacks were the only thing capable of stopping Devimon, once again by killing. Such a conversation between Cody and TK would have served the story well actually. Their whole fusion arc was about Cody accepting that TK felt that they had to destroy Black War Greymon. But in the end, becoming okay with killing isn't what made Cody bond with TK and unlock the fusion. My issue is that Cody never resolved his ethical dilemma. In episode 35, he talked to TK's brother Matt about it, and we're thinking that, hey, maybe Cody finally realizes that Black War Greymon has to die, even if he has a soul. However, this isn't the case, as the episode ends with Cody refusing to kill Black War Greymon. But already in the next episode, Cody achieves fusion with TK. So what changed? Well, he sees how close Jolie and Kari has become since they fused their monsters. This makes Cody want to fuse too, and this desire is apparently so strong that he totally changes his stance on whether or not killing is okay. Yet, for some reason, a few episodes later, he's still hesitant about killing Marine Devimon. This is extra odd, since Shakumon should be a symbol of Cody being okay with killing. This is all just a mess. The two just fused because the story needed them to. It would have been more effective if they held off on fusing until this point in the story. When Cody sees that these demons are attacking a hospital full of innocent people, he should realize that they have no choice but to send them back to hell. TK would agree. Bam, fusion. Giving this kill hesitancy to both Jolie and Cody is so unnecessary. It doesn't add anything. And besides these two demons, our heroes are never in a position of having to kill again. After this, the only villains that are left are Arachnemon, Mamemon, and Belial Vamdemon. And both Arachnemon and Mamemon are exterminated by Belial Vamdemon, and he himself is killed by the kidnapped children. It would have been much better if Jolie were just killing monsters, and if Cody had a hesitance story arc all to himself. In the end, Demon isn't too interesting. It's a shame, since he had the potential to be much more. He's the leader of a group of demons. He's so demony that his name is Demon. Under those red robes, he looks like this. When I see this creature, I imagine the ultimate evil, the devil from the deepest pits of hell. But in the end, Demon is pretty much just a generic bad guy. We never find out his motives besides wanting Ken's dark seed. His battles aren't anything special either, and he could easily be replaced by any other high-level Digimon. The good guys realize that Demon can't be defeated by simply having the shit beaten out of him. Instead, they try to imprison him in the Dark World, although they realize that they have no idea how to open a gate leading there. How about you try to open another gate? Heaven's Gate. You know, Holy Angelmon's attack, where he opens a portal to an empty void? It seems like it would be worth a shot at least. However, Ken remembers that his Digivice can open a gate to the Dark World. How come his Digivice is the only one that can open such a gate? You might think it's because it turned dark and evil, but that was done after he first got to the Dark World. It didn't make sense in his flashback episode, and it doesn't make sense now. That being said, the Dark World is pretty much the perfect prison for Demon. It seems like the only way to escape this realm is to combat the darkness with light, and since Demon is pretty much darkness incarnate, it's safe to say that he'll be stuck there for a while. Good thinking, writers. Number 33. Minor pet peeves that get their own segment for some reason. Around this time, Imperial Dramon unlocks yet another evolution, or rather, it's a mode change, but this fighter mode is more powerful, so there's really not much of a difference. Why does Davis unlock so many evolutions compared to the other characters? Davis, Yoli and Cody all get 2 armor evolutions each, plus an adult form and a fusion. But only Davis got a 3rd armor monster. Only Davis could evolve to Mega, and only Davis unlocks this 2nd form. Why is Davis so special? 02 isn't the only season that does this sort of thing, but I still don't like it. I wanna see what Selphimon and Shakumon can evolve into too. Speaking of evolution, after fighting in perfect form for a while, the Season 1 partner monsters suddenly degenerate when they need their power the most. We are told that the reason for this is that the Digimon have been in the real world for a dangerously long period of time. What sort of bullshit is this? The monsters came to the real world on the eve of the 24th of December, and this episode takes place on the 26th, meaning that they have been in the real world for a little under 2 days at this point. However, in Season 1, they popped back into the real world in the middle of August 1st. They didn't return to the digital world until the night of the 3rd of August. For those of you not keeping track, that's 2.5 days. That's more than in Season 2. Izzy, or rather the writers, are spouting bullshit. You can't just make up danger like that just because you need to give your heroes a disadvantage. Similarly, you can't just have an advantage appear from nowhere when you need it. In episode 44, the plot needs a car chase to happen, so all of a sudden, Yo's brother pops up to drive our heroes to their destination. This is extra infuriating, since the characters could simply have evolved their Digimon and used those as transport. But no, why would you use Digimon in the show called Digimon when we can use a car? Number 34. Cody's dead dad. Here's a scene where Cody's grandfather learns that Digimon are real. In a twist, we find out that he had suspected it all along. In fact, his son Hiroki, who is Cody's dad, was best friends with Oikawa, and together they used to communicate with Digimon while playing video games. I really liked that they tied Cody's dead dad into the narrative, but Hiroki being a Digimon fan in combination with Cody being a chosen child comes off as a major coincidence. This is because we know that Cody became a chosen child because he saw Kabuterimon fly by when his plane had to make an emergency landing. It would have been so much better if they somehow managed to link Cody being a chosen child with his father's fascination with Digimon. So how about this? Hiroki could have shown Cody some digital creatures on the video game screen when he was really young. Cody wouldn't necessarily have to remember it, but this would also make Cody associate Digimon with his dead father, which could have been interesting to explore. Anyways, this coincidence with Cody's father and Cody separately being introduced to Digimon is another reason that making it up as you go along isn't such a good idea. If they had planned everything from the beginning, I'm sure that Hiroki's backstory would have been both revealed and played a part earlier on in the series. Now for something I don't like. Cody's mom is right here, yet she doesn't react to Armadillomon. Seeing how the parents reacted when they found out about Digimon was one of the highlights of Season 1. Now, if you had her present for the earlier scene when Cody's grandfather was talking about Hiroki, we could have her react really surprised. Her own husband never told her about Digimon. That would strengthen the notion that the bond that Hiroki shared with Oikawa was really something special, something he didn't even share with his wife. And here's yet another thing I don't like. Cody's grandfather lies to the mother about Cody going out. Now, this is super out of character for him. In the Submarimon episode, we saw that Cody's grandfather has a very old-fashioned view of lying, and he tells Cody that this is something you should never do under any circumstances. Yet here, the grandfather himself is lying. It would have been nice if he had a mini character arc of his own about realizing that lying is acceptable sometimes, just like Cody did. But he doesn't. This is just a continuity error. Cody then meets up with Oikawa. In a nice touch, Cody tells him that his actions are unforgivable. This is what TK said about the forces of darkness earlier in the series. This shows us that Cody has in fact understood what TK meant. I guess it's better late than never. Cody's grandfather steps in and offers Oikawa his friendship. He wants to have someone to talk with about Hiroki. He's willing to forgive Oikawa. He's giving the villain a second chance, a chance of redemption. I love this. Number 35. Parallel dimensions and cards with monsters on them. We see that these Digimon are building some sort of mosaic thing to try and seal the gate to the digital world. But at the end of this episode, Black War Greymon sacrifices himself in order to seal the gate on his own. Okay, I don't understand how this seal works. Wouldn't the Digimon's mosaic thing have worked without Black War Greymon's sacrifice? Did he sacrifice himself for nothing? The narrator tells us that the seal worked thanks to Black War Greymon. Does that mean that the mosaic project was for nothing? Listen, we have two parties trying to achieve the same goal in two different ways. At least one party cannot take credit for the success. If Black War Greymon is the one who seals, then these shots of the mosaic group serve no purpose to the story and should have been cut out of the episode. Also, where does this ability to use your dying body to seal the gate come from? How does it work? And what's going on? It turns out that Oikawa's goons kidnap the children in order to plant dark seeds in them. The seeds eventually bloom into dark flowers, which will somehow help Oikawa enter the digital world. Okay, his motivation makes sense. He has wanted to go to the digital world ever since Hiroki died. What doesn't make sense is how the dark flowers work in practice. We're told that adults can't enter the digital world, so Oikawa intends to use them as a barrier to, I guess, fool the system? How does that work? Do they block his adultness? Is that the dark flower's only function? Then what did Demon want with them? He could go and leave the digital world as he pleased. Vamdemon later tells us that he lied to Oikawa about the purpose of the flowers. They only exist to give him the power to be reborn. Oh, okay. I assume Demon wanted something similar with them? Like, maybe he wanted to resurrect his evil grandmother or something, but we never find out exactly what. At this point, we also learn that the Dark Towers originate from the Dark World. They have several uses, but the best one is changing the digital world's environment. I guess transmitting anti-evolution signals was a feature that was added later. How did these guys get a hold of this technology in the first place? And what does changing a world's environment mean? Why didn't we see that feature earlier on in the season? But there's no time for questions because Oikawa uses a set of cards in order to travel between worlds. These very same cards were used in Season 1 to travel from the digital world to the real one. These cards had to be placed in a specific order to open a portal to a specific world. However, there was one card too many, meaning that one of these two was a fake. But in the end, Tai chose the Gomamon card, which was the real one, so it all worked out well. Anyways, Oikawa is using the fake Agumon card, which takes him and the kidnapped kids to the wrong realm. Look at that! They are exploring concepts from Season 1 in a new way. This is good, but the fake Agumon card is what gets them into the wrong realm, right? That's consistent with the threat that was laid out by Janai in Season 1. So, Black War Greymon sealing the gate to the digital world didn't end up mattering in the end. Oikawa wouldn't have gone there anyway. Wow, what a waste on Blackrock Greymon's part. Number 36. It was Vamdemon all along! In this emotion realm, we learn that Oikawa has been possessed by Belial Vamdemon, who is a stronger version of Vamdemon. This reveal has a few major implications, so I'll have to go on a few tangents before moving on. First of all, this reveal was actually foreshadowed in Oikawa's introductory scene. Look at this, he's drinking blood. Vamdemon is a vampire, and it was established in Season 1 that he needs blood to sustain himself. Listen, I've been pretty harsh on the show so far, and I'll continue to be. That being said, I'm more than happy to point out when they do something right. The red liquid will simply be a weird detail that will go unnoticed by most. I myself didn't notice it until I rewatched the show for this review. However, for attentive viewers, the blood is a great foreshadowing. This sort of polish can only be achieved when you plan your story and know what you're doing. I'm so proud. See how everything is better when you do it like this? Second of all, we learn that it was Vamdemon who has been pulling the strings all season. It was Vamdemon who, while possessing Oikawa, sent the email to Ken prompting him to go to the Dark World and become the Kaiser. I mention this now because I've seen people say that the Vamdemon foreshadowing goes as far back as the first episode of Season 2. They say that this symbol on the Kaiser's goggles is supposed to be the same as the one on Vamdemon's coffin in Season 1. However, this symbol is known as the Mark of Evil, and it isn't exclusively used by Vamdemon. For example, the Mark of Evil also appears on Devimon's chest, on Skull Satamon's forehead, and on Lady Devimon's foot and her hand. By the way, Skull Satamon and Lady Devimon are both minions of Demon. In other words, the Mark of Evil is used by both Vamdemon and his enemies. The Kaiser wearing it means nothing. Third of all, in order for a chosen child to become, well, chosen, they have to have had an encounter with a Digimon at a younger age. The Season 1 kids all witnessed the fight between Greymon and a Parrotmon. Jolie and Ken both witnessed the Diablomon fight on the internet, and Cody was present while Kabuterimon flew by here. That leaves only one, Davis. In episode 14, we learned that, during Season 1, Davis was one of the many children who were kidnapped and held hostage in Tokyo Big Sight. The kidnapper was none other than Vamdemon. That's right, Davis has a personal history with our main bad guy. Whoa, I can't wait for this relationship to play a major role in this final confrontation. Yeah, no. Their shared backstory is never mentioned once during these final episodes. I guess the writers simply forgot. After revealing himself, Belial Vamdemon's first order of business is to kill off his own henchmen Arachnomon and Mamimon. I haven't talked too much about these two. They are a bumbling duo who doesn't pose any actual threat to our heroes. Mamimon has a crush on Arachnomon, but she doesn't reciprocate his feelings. Seeing Belial Vamdemon torture and kill her right before his eyes causes Mamimon to snap. He's got no reason to live without his beloved, and now he's just filled with a lust for revenge. He doesn't last very long though, as Belial Vamdemon kills him in one hit. There's a sense of shit getting real when the comic relief characters get wiped out like this. It's similar to how Vamdemon killed his minions Gotsumon and Pumpkinmon in Season 1. I would say that this Season 2 version is just a bit more effective, as we've followed this duo longer, and the fact that Mamimon's love for Arachnomon went unreciprocated, yet he still holds on to it after her death. It's also tragic. It's a well-executed scene. Good job, Season 2. Number 37. Hopes and Dreams. To defeat the good guys, Belial Vamdemon creates an illusion where everyone is super happy. All their dreams have come true. What each character dreams about should say a lot about them, and whether or not these illusions ring true for them would depend on what we have learned about them. So what happens in each illusion? TK's dream has his parents back together. I guess I haven't really talked about it, but his parents are split up back in the real world. TK lives with his mother, and Matt lives with their dad. In the illusion, they are all together, having a nice family dinner. We saw TK's desire for them to reunite at the end of Season 1. However, this hasn't been mentioned at all in Season 2. In one episode, we saw that he visits Matt and their father once a year to have some father-son time. But TK didn't seem extraordinarily excited at all. It was just like a normal day for him. He didn't rush to greet his father, he didn't embrace him, he didn't tell his father how much he's missed him. There's no emotion at all in this scene. I wish the writers would have developed TK more this season, because this illusion comes off as fake and hollow. Yoli dreams that she is allowed to eat as much cake as she wants. What? When has limited food supply ever been a problem for Jolie? We've never seen her relationship with sweets before. Is she not allowed to eat cake in her real life? She also celebrates the fact that she's alone, without her 3 siblings bothering her. Hawkman has to tell us that this is part of her wish. Yoli feeling that she doesn't get enough attention at home is news to me. We've seen her home life briefly, but we've never really seen her being discontent with her siblings. The show hasn't established Yoli's relationship to any of them. We don't even know their names. By this point in the show, the audience should be well aware what the main character's desires and motivations are. But I didn't know that Jolie wants her siblings to be erased from existence. This person doesn't feel like Jolie at all. In Cody's illusion, his father is alive and the two take a field trip through the digital world together. I wouldn't say that having his father back has been established as his number 1 desire, but at least it makes enough sense. This one works. Kari is just chilling out with Gatomon. A little kid with a Nyaromon starts talking to her. It appears that Kari imagines a world where everyone has a partner Digimon. This one comes out of nowhere too. We've never seen Kari's relationship with kids before. Later, we'll find out that she becomes a kindergarten teacher in the future, which similarly has no build-up. Kari is very close to the stereotypical Mary Sue, and her utopian illusion seems to reflect that. She just wants everyone to be happy. How very non-selfish of her. I guess it sort of fits, but once again, the children part hasn't had any build-up. Ken sees his Kaiser persona being tortured by wild Digimon. This shows a strong desire to pay for his past mistakes, and he really wants to redeem himself. Then his brother Osamu tells him that his sins have been paid for. Yeah, that's what Ken would wish for. This one works great. Davis doesn't get any illusion, because apparently he's perfectly happy as is. This is complete bullshit. The only thing he had going on was that he constantly tries to pursue Kari romantically. There was never a moment where he said, "Alright, I'm over her, and now I'm perfectly content." So why wouldn't he have a fantasy about being with her? That has been his only drive this season. We've also seen him dream about becoming a soccer superstar, yet there's no mention of that here either. So yeah, after 49 episodes together with these characters, you would expect that the writers would at least know these characters well enough to show us their desires in life. You'd expect that all 6 characters would get full marks, but I'm disappointed. Davis and the others want to defeat Belial Vamdemon and think the phrase, "I want to get stronger." As this is a world where emotions turn into power, the Digimon all evolve into their higher forms at once. Curiously enough, Magnamon isn't present, even if it would make sense for Davis to want every one of Vemon's evolutions to be here. Davis' wish should be able to make it materialize, even if Magnamon is a once-in-a-lifetime evolution. Similarly, Belial Vamdemon should be able to summon all of his evolutions too, but he doesn't. Then there's the issue of Seraphimon and Holy Dramon. There was a movie I mentioned earlier, Digimon Hurricane Landing Transcendent Evolution The Golden Digimentals, in which Patamon and Gatomon both reach their mega forms. If this movie were canon, it would take place between episodes 21 and 22. Now we're at episode 49, so the 2 mega monsters should appear here, right? But they don't. So I guess the movie is non-canon. Anyways, the monsters blast Belial Vamdemon through the walls of this dimension. How did they do that? A dimensional wall shouldn't be a physical thing. And also, I would imagine that if it were, it would be more stable. Number 38. The evil bat demon dies and the stupid kids say stupid things. We have now reached the final episode in which this girl complains that she is nothing. She says the chosen children are special. How does she know the term chosen children? Davis tells us that it's no big deal that these kids aren't chosen children. There's nothing special about the ones who are. That's a good lesson. Everyone is special in their own right and so on. There's also... wait. No! Don't make them chosen children after you've argued that there's nothing special about being a chosen child. You had a good message going and now you've taken it back. You've learned nothing. You've removed the lesson, and now the moral of your story is hollow. Also, why are these kids given the D3 variant of the Digivice? I thought the reason that the Season 2 group were given those were to enable armor evolution and to compete with the Dark D3. But Qinglongmon said that our hero's 5 partner monsters were the only ones in the whole digital world who could armor evolve. In addition, the Dark D3 is no longer a threat. These new chosen children should have gotten normal Digivices, just like the Season 1 group and the international chosen children. But nevertheless, Davis spreads hope and joy to the children, which happens to be Belial Vamdemon's single weakness. Oh joy, the day is saved. But what about the dark flowers on the children's heads? Well, apparently, as long as the children believe in their dreams, the dark seeds won't sprout. Oh, okay. But what if some of them do develop doubt? I mean, everyone feels like that sometime, right? Everyone has a bad day or two. So this isn't really a responsible way of dealing with the problem at all. Whoa, look at that. Now every chosen child in the whole world travels to the digital world. How does that work? We've been told throughout the season that the gate between worlds can only be opened by a D3 Digivice. And everyone in existence is already here. The gate is supposed to be super close now, since Blackboard Greymon spent his last life force sealing that gate. Man, his final heroic act is pointless like 3 times over. Then Genai hands Gatomon her holy ring. Where did you get that from? She lost it in the woods. How long have you had that? Wait, it was left behind from the Kaiser's base? So, used to control the power of darkness. What does that even mean? Wasn't that what the Digimantle of Miracles was for? Or am I completely misunderstanding something here? Also, are you really saying that the Digimon Kaiser, aka Ken, had Gatomon's holy ring in his base all this time? Why weren't we shown that before? Why didn't Ken say anything when he became a good guy? Why didn't Genai tell anyone that he found it? And what's this about it being needed for the fusions? It wasn't needed when Omegamon was formed in the Diablomon battle 2 years ago, and it won't be needed in the future movies Diablomon Strikes Back, Adventure Tri or Last Evolution Kitsuna. Also, before this final battle started, Belial Vamdemon said that he created the Evil Ring by copying and inverting the Holy Ring's data. When did he do that exactly? You'll notice that in the first episode of Season 2, the Kaiser enslaves a Unimon with an evil ring, who then causes Gatomon to lose her ring. The evil rings were around even before Gatomon lost her holy ring. Or is Belial Vamdemon saying that he created the evil rings all the way back in Season 1? Gatomon worked for Vamdemon before she turned into a good guy. But if Vamdemon had evil rings back in Season 1, why did he never use them? He was building an army to invade the real world, yet none of his minions wore evil rings. They were simply evil Digimon. In conclusion, Genai is talking shit. Could you please stop making up this shit as you go along? Hey, look at that! Oikawa finally got to go to the digital world. And he gets his own partner Digimon, Peepimon. But what does Peepimon mean by we finally meet? Prior to Season 1, Koromon and the others waited for years. This guy came into existence not 5 seconds ago. Did he just teleport here from somewhere else? I don't think so. And then Oikawa dies. As his life ends, so does the story of Digimon Adventure 02. Oikawa's arc was all about how adults can't enter the digital world. As a fuck you to him and to the audience, we are then treated to an epilogue where all of the chosen children are now chosen adults, and they all hang out in the digital world. Not to mention, every character seems to be happily married and have children who have the same Digimon as their digiparent. Mo, that's shit. It's not creative at all. Like, none of them ended up alone. It's just like the end of Harry Potter. Well, let's go through the epilogue and see where each one of our characters end up. Number 39. Epilogue. Tai was always the guy who would run headfirst into danger. He would act first and think second. 25 years later, he's an ambassador of the digital world? Really? Why is he a diplomat? A position that demands that you think before you act. In other words, the exact opposite of what his strengths are. I mean, sure, it would be a nice character arc for him to change and then use his brain more. Maybe have him learn from the time he spent with Izzy. But Season 2 should have planted these ambassador seeds. We need to see this change for it not to come out of nowhere. We can't just be told of it like this. I think Tai should have become something sports related. Obviously not a soccer star, but maybe a PE teacher. Or maybe a soccer coach. Matt becomes an astronaut? What even is this? Space is never a thing in Digimon, and Matt never expressed any interest in astronomy or science fiction or anything space related. Maybe Matt could become a chef. He was shown to be very good at cooking in Season 1, and his skills even rubbed off on Tai. Alternatively, his experience with music could lead to a career in sound editing. Oh yeah, and he's married to Sora. Ugh. In Season 1, there were some hints that Tai was very into Sora, especially during the climax of the Etemon arc. He's the one who sacrifices himself to save her. The two of them go way back, what with them playing soccer on the same team. My point is that if anyone was going to end up with Sora, it should have been Tai, but now Sora and Matt are a canonical couple. We saw in episode 38 that Sora attends Matt's concert and brings him a present. What do they see in each other? Well, we never find out. This came out of nowhere, without any build-up, and it never develops any further. The next instance of this relationship is in this epilogue. Out of all the main characters, why is it these two who become a couple? There wasn't a super amount of scenes focusing on just the two of them in Season 1 either. I mean, there's the scene where Matt talks Sora out of the depression cave, but that's pretty much it. If this relationship were developed a bit more, I would probably be fine with it, but as it is now, it's just nothing. Sora was a tomboy. Her mother wanted her to work in her flower shop, but Sora wanted to play soccer. In many ways, she's the opposite of the stereotypical girl character. So what's in her future? Well, she becomes a fashion designer. The most stereotypically girly occupation there is. Second only to princess. No. Izzy is a digital world researcher. Yeah, that actually makes sense. He should obviously work in IT. Great. Mimi becomes a cook. Has she ever shown any interest in cooking? Considering how her story develops later in Adventure Try, she should have been the one to become a fashion designer. Otherwise, I can picture her as a waitress or something like that. Once she becomes an adult and has to take care of herself, her spoiled upbringing would come around and bite her in the ass. Joe becomes the digital world's first doctor. Yeah, he studied to become a human doctor. Wouldn't human biology and digital biology be totally different? But I guess I'll let this one slide. Joe becoming a doctor is a perfect fit. It's just the digital part that confuses me. TK becomes an author, and he writes about his adventures in the digital world. It's even revealed that he is the narrator of the show. Okay, he was there from the beginning of Season 1. He was the youngest of the group, and these adventures likely shaped him into the man he grew up to be. I'm okay with him being a writer, but once again, there has been no build-up to this. No line anywhere about him being interested in writing or anything like that. This could have been implemented easily by having him writing a diary, for example. Season 2 could have started with him writing about Season 1, which would work both as a reintroduction for the audience and as a foundation for TK's interest in writing. Throughout the season, we could see him take notes whenever they meet a new monster. Once again, the show would have benefited so much from doing a little planning. As mentioned before, Kari becomes a kindergarten teacher. I guess that works fine, although we never see her interact with children in the series, so once again, there's no build-up. In his effort to restore hope to the kidnapped children, Davis told them about his dreams. He wants to open a noodle cart. This is exactly what he ends up doing. There are both good and bad aspects to this. Running a noodle cart isn't exactly a glamorous job, and I think that is fitting for Davis. However, his noodle company becomes so successful that he has chain stores all over the world. What? No! Why is his face on Time magazine? Why can't Davis be a simple noodle salesman? That's fine enough for him. I mean, he never showed any special interest in noodles during the season, so I don't quite buy that this is his dream. But otherwise, that's a fitting level of work for him. Why does every chosen child have to end up like a super success? Well, everyone except for Jolie. All we know about her future is that she married Ken and they have 3 kids together. So, what's her occupation? Is she just a housewife? Why? I would have guessed that she'd be into IT or something like that, like Izzy. Or maybe she would work in her parents' grocery store? And why did she marry Ken? Sure, she had a quick crush on him back in episode 8, but 1. That was before she knew that he was the Digimon Kaiser. 2. That version of Ken was an antisocial super genius possessed by a dark seed. The Ken she befriended after the Kaiser arc has a totally different personality. 3. Since then, she developed a crush on Michael, and she never displayed any romantic feelings towards Ken ever again. This relationship is so forced and I don't buy it. Hey, maybe these two should have been fusion partners. Or maybe the Digimental of Love could have figured into this somehow. It's like there are all these dots just waiting to be connected, and yet it never happens. Ken, on the other hand, became a police officer. Since he still harbors great guilt for his past evil actions, this seems like a further attempt at redeeming himself. Even though he's no longer a genius, he's still sharp enough to be a valuable asset to any police force. This one fits. As Vamdemon entered the emotion realm, he abandoned Oikawa's body as his host. When he was defeated, Cody decided to help Oikawa in his weakened state. This was a great moment and a peak of what little character arc Cody had. He became willing to forgive the redeemed bad guy, just like with Ken, but this time he realized it was the right thing to do immediately. In the epilogue, Cody has become a defense attorney, which is the appropriate next step in his development. So, out of these 12 characters, only Izzy, Joe, Kari, Cody, and Ken had fitting ends to their arcs. 5 out of 12 is not even 50%. I've heard about character assassination, but this is more like character serial killing. Think about that as we enter my final thoughts. Let's recap and compare Season 2 to its predecessor. Season 1 had 54 episodes with 4 arcs. Episodes 1 to 13 were the Devimon arc, which introduced us to the characters and showed us their dynamic, both as a full group and in smaller teams. Next up is the Etemon arc, covering episodes 14 to 21, in which the characters are developed a bit further. In the Vamdemon arc, shit got real, as we saw most of the kids complete their character arcs from episodes 22 to 39. Finally, episodes 40 to 54 saw the chosen children take on the Dark Masters and face their toughest challenges yet. On the other hand, Season 2 only had 3 arcs. Episodes 1 to 21 have our heroes facing the Digimon Kaiser. Most of the arc is spent bringing down Dark Towers. Rinse and repeat. Most of it is just filler. There's never any sense of progression. We never find out just how large the Kaiser's empire is. And even as our heroes liberate one area, another one is seized by the Kaiser. Every now and again, one of the kids would find a Digimental. You'd hope this would be an opportunity for the characters to grow, but it just doesn't happen. Instead, the characters are twisted out of character and are briefly given a flaw we've never seen before. This flaw is then quickly overcome, only to never be mentioned again. It's nice to see a new evolution, but it's never earned. The one thing this arc does right is Ken. Or rather, as soon as Ken is defeated, he's done right. At last we get an interesting character. This takes us to the second arc, running from episode 22 to 37. It deals with Ken trying to redeem himself and join the good guys. We see the partner Digimon evolve into the adult level and later pair up with one another and fuse into stronger forms. All this while facing fake monsters made by Arachnamon and Mamimon. This pair works well when they're Oikawa's bumbling servants, but he isn't introduced until the third arc. So for now, our main villains are just comic relief characters, and they aren't effective enough to be the main threat of a whole arc. Their strongest fake monster is Black War Greymon, who tries to destroy the balance between the digital world and the real one. In the end, his arc about trying to find a purpose in life by destroying Holy Stones didn't lead anywhere. Those episodes are pretty much also filler. Fusion was another opportunity for the writers to implement some character development for our heroes, but for the most part, that doesn't happen either. One by one, they warm up to Ken, but otherwise, none of them have developed to become any different from what they started as. When every Digimental had been activated and the Kaiser had been defeated, it's like the writers had no idea where to go, no plan. The plot just meanders and very few things of substance are accomplished. Lastly, episodes 38 to 50 are all about stopping the human bad guy Oikawa from entering the digital world. On Christmas Eve, the good guys split up to defeat Digimon all over the world. There's also a quick distraction with Demon and his cronies. Apart from that, this last Oikawa arc at least seems like the writers knew where they were going. There's a bunch of payoffs to earlier stuff, like the Dark World and Cody's dad, which makes it feel a bit like it's tying together stuff. Eventually, we end the story with the final battle against Belial Vamdemon. If people think this season is good, as in quality storytelling, I would be curious as to why. I mean, there's no plan for the story, and the characters are poorly established and most of them lack proper development. None of the new mechanics seem to have been fully thought out, like the digital clothes, the Digimental, the defreeze, the TV sets, the evil rings, and the Dark Towers. So, if none of that is good, what's left? I imagine that some people will defend the show by saying that it's for kids, but that's not really a good excuse, is it? Writing for a children's show is still a job. It's not like you can just turn off your brain and not put any effort into it. Kids are smarter than you think, you know. And is that really how you want to market your show? Digimon Adventures 02. We know it's crap, but it's for kids, so who cares, right? If you actually do put in effort, children's media can be enjoyed by adults too. In fact, I've seen lots of kids shows that are better than some adult shows. I mean, just look at season 1 of Digimon Adventure. It's by no means a masterpiece, but at least it deserves a place in the category of good. That's pretty much the standard I've compared season 2 to this whole review, and I think that's fair. Season 1 holds up. Season 2? Not so much. People tend to defend bad media by saying stuff like, well, can you do any better? Well, first of all, that's not my job as a consumer. That's the writer's job. I mean, imagine if you went to a restaurant with shitty food and the chef asks if you can do any better. It's a bad counter to criticism. But just to prove that the things I'm criticizing really are bad, I tried to do better anyways. Throughout these videos, I've sprinkled in a few examples of my own suggestions for how to fix a few problems I have with the show. My point is that the writers could have come up with these fixes too. I've been pretty negative thus far, but there are some positives too. I really appreciate the decision to set Season 2 a few years down the line, rather than around the same time as what came before. By allowing time to move forward in the show, it becomes more realistic. This tells us that the characters age. They change and develop. Well, in theory at least. I'm glad to see that this was continued in Adventure Tri and Last Evolution Kitsuna. Compare this to the Pokemon anime, in which the main character Ash has been stuck as a 10-year-old boy for over 20 years now. Back to the positives. The digital world looks great in most episodes. Just like in Season 1, there are clashes of strange elements in natural settings. Bird cages and cars in the Old West. Manhole covers in ancient China. Trams sticking out of the ground in a mountain. I really love that stuff. It really gives the digital world an identity of its own. Like if some programmer just 3D modeled all of this stuff and just dumped the files here. So, in conclusion, Digimon Adventure 02 is really a mixed bag, containing its fair share of both dogshit and some bullshit. The end.